We are now in part 4 of the Marx lecture, and here we're going to discuss structures of communism, free development of labor and faculties, collective ownership and decision-making about production under communism, no money, no wages, no sales, no profits under communism, and the last theme will be that of sociality. When will this move to communism happen? And what will communist society look like? The move that we have described in the previous lecture. Marx thought it was pointless to speculate on such questions, as all thinking is limited and distorted by the historical time from which it takes place. We'll get there, we'll know it when we get there, in other words. There are two clues, however, that Marx offers. One, in place of the old bourgeois society with its classes and class antagonisms, we shall have an association in which the free development of each person is the condition for the free development of all persons. That's the first clue. The second clue. From each according to their abilities, and to each according to their needs. Marx's version of freedom is this free development. Free development of each person as a condition for the free development of all, right? So Marx's version of freedom is this free development. And it is also a labor according to one's abilities, and a use of goods and services produced according to one's needs. That is also Marx's version of happiness. Labor is not only that by which we live, and without which we cannot live, as production of what we need to live, but labor is also a creative act, and is creation itself. It's not hard to think of labor as creative. It creates what wasn't there, creates something new. Throughout history, while labor is not yet very productive, such that scarcity is not overcome and needs are not met, the labor's focus is indeed production. And labor appears to be production. But even under these conditions, we can catch glimpses of labor's deep essence as creation. In those instances where labor is transformed by inventions of new ways of laboring, and also in those instances where labor is truly creative, such as in the arts and crafts, and even in hobbies. Labor in those instances is simply creative and is a joy to do, because it is our deep essence as laborers to be creative. Not because in those instances labor is productive, right? That's the hobby, that's the arts. We do those things for the joy of creation rather than for utility of the products. Throughout history, under the conditions of scarcity, labor is frequently toil and is subordinated to the needs of production, rather than free to be according to its essence of creation and creativity. Labor is not free according to its essence of creation and creativity throughout history, since there is scarcity, and labor is frequently toil that we want to avoid at all costs. At the end of history, however, once labor becomes super productive and scarcity is overcome, and there are no more unfulfilled needs, labor can be what it really is, a creative use of our faculties or abilities for the sake of exercise and development of those abilities. That is true freedom and happiness of a human being. That is, in its very essence, a laborer creator. according to Marx. And that freedom and happiness are only possible after labor develops and becomes enormously productive and is able to produce for needs with minimum of human labor. Think AI and other aspects of automation so that the maximally increased free time is used for development and expression of labor as creativity. That free time is incorporated into the work itself, and the workplace is organized to develop the creative capacities of laborers, since production for needs and wants is mainly taken care of through automation. At that point, even leisure time changes fundamentally and becomes about free development and exercise of our creative capacities, rather than frequently mindless and uncreative consumption for pleasure, in which human beings frequently engaged throughout most of their history, alienated as they were from their essence of free and creative labor. But that freedom and happiness are only possible after the development of technology is accelerated to be maximally productive under the competition for maximization of profits under capitalism. Once technology is that productive and needs can be fulfilled without any or with little toil, a switch to communism should take place, under which work is organized not to make profits, as under capitalism, or for maximum of productivity, as under previously existing communist regimes that were communist in the name only, but now work is organized for maximum development and exercise of each laborer's creative capacities. Under communism, means of production are owned, even though there is no such thing as ownership anymore, really, and deployed by laborers themselves, not by capital holders nor by the state. The products are then distributed among the workers. Each takes what they need from the common stockpile of goods and services produced. How production takes place and what is produced are decided by the laborers themselves, democratically, not by the market, is the point here. Thus, private property, ownership of means of production for the sake of maximizing profit, is abolished under communism. The money itself is abolished under communism. There are no more profits, wages, or sales and purchases. Production is for the sake of fulfillment of needs, of what is needed to live, and the need for development and exercise of our creative capacities. No one is interested in working as little as possible and free ride on the labors of everyone else, since work is organized to be for the joy of exercise and development of creative capacities, not for maximization of profits for capitalists or maximization of production for the state. Nor is anyone interested in taking from the common stockpile more than they need. There's enough to satisfy everyone's needs, and there are no unlimited wants. Since the joy is not in unlimited consumption, but in exercise and development of one's creative capacities. But again, all of this is only possible once technology is super productive and eliminates scarcity, and not until then. Capitalism must be allowed to work its magic of acceleration of innovation under competition for profit before a move to communism can be made. Labor, technology, and history, and what a human being is, are inextricably intertwined. There is one more element in that intertwinement that must be mentioned, Sociality. Labor, technology, and history are not individual phenomena, but are only possible as collective and organized in communities and societies. People specialize in production of different goods and services and different aspects of the same goods and services and exchange their products with one another. These relations can be competitive, such as boss versus employee, seller versus the buyer, employee versus employee, consumer versus consumer, or they can be cooperative. Human beings can encounter each other as opposing each other in a struggle, or they can encounter each other as partners and friends, assisting each other in mutual development. Marx's claim is that how we encounter each other socially is determined less by individual psychologies than by the culture that accomplishes and facilitates production. In the main, argues Marx, human beings will freely develop their social, creative natures under communism rather than earlier in history and truly become what human beings are. In other words, rather than for maximization of profits for the bourgeoisie or maximization of production for the state, work under communism will be organized to develop and express both our creative as well as social natures.